is Prem. I'm from Malaysia, Malaysian born in KL. I studied locally, primary school up to secondary school, and then I went to Sydney, Australia to do my engineering degree. I graduated in mechanical engineering honors, and then I came back home to Malaysia to start working. Right, I always wanted to get into the oil and gas industry, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the oil and gas industry. So what I did was I just applied for a few jobs to engineering consultancy firms like Acre Solutions, Wally Parsons, Technique, these companies. I was lucky enough to get a job with Technip in KL, in Tun Razak, and they then put me in the piping engineering department. That's how I started my career in piping. Right, so I was in Technip for 5 years as a piping engineer, and then I went on to work for a Norwegian company called APL. APL stands for Advanced Production and Loading Systems. They used to be under the BW Offshore Group, now under NOV. I was hired to build up the piping engineering team. I was there for 5 years, and then I moved on to this company called UOP Honeywell. UOP Honeywell, they design gas processing skids. It was a company from the US starting up in Malaysia. I joined, they hired me then to build up their piping team as well. I was there for 3 years, and then I went on to work for Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, DSME. It's a Korean construction company. We were building FPSOs and wellhead platforms. I was part of the engineering team handling piping for design and construction activities. I was there for 4 years, and then I came back to KL, and now I'm with Petrofac Malaysia. We are operating few wellhead platforms in the Chendo field off Terengganu. I'm handling all piping engineering activities in Petrofac. That's pretty much my work experience, and I'm still at Petrofac at the moment.
Yeah, so what are the attitudes and organizational behaviors needed to survive in an organization or a company?
For attitudes and organizational behaviors, there are a few things, right? There are a few things that I think is needed in an employee. You see, one of the main criteria, if you ask me, whenever you get into an organization, is to try and fit in. You see, so being adaptable is key. You've got to be proactive. When I say proactive, what I mean is, although you've been given a task, try and think a few steps forward. What else is needed? Maybe use your experience from previous projects to see possible look-aheads and possible problems that you may face. Try and implement shorter ways to get certain things done. And most importantly, see, you will not be able to know everything, right? So most importantly is trying to learn, and you got to have a positive attitude, because every day will be something different. People try and, whenever you go into a meeting, people try and show you how they know a lot more. That's not advisable, try and give your input as a team instead as an individual. That I think is important.
What are the criteria needed in order to be recruited by a company? What do you need?
So if you are, if you're looking for an experienced role, right? It's important to have that previous experience. But I think, like for myself, just say, when I got this role, they were looking for a lead piping engineer. I've covered pretty much most areas of piping, design, stress analysis, support design. So if you're going for an experienced role, then that relevant experience is key. But I think on a personal level, I think one of the main criteria is your attitude. Don't try and give them some information that is not relevant and is not even true. If you have 7 years experience, just put 7 years experience. Don't try and put 10 years, 12 years. People try and play themselves up a bit too much in resumes. You see, if you're a fresh grad, I would say there are 3 things that you should highlight: attitude, skill, and knowledge. In that in that list, in that order, because you won't have knowledge, you won't have skill because you're a fresh grad. But what you can show them is you have the right attitude. Those 3 criteria, if you ask me, is very important.
What do companies look for in an employee, especially fresh graduates with no experience, no previous experience?
Okay, I've also been in the hiring process. When I see a resume, I look for a few things. One is, of course, you need the relevant degrees. Certifications. If it's an engineering job, you need to be qualified as an engineer. So you need a relevant degree. We don't look for experience because you're a fresh grad. I like to look for somebody who's a little bit more all-rounded. You have, you're part of a club. It can be a Toastmasters club. It can be a road track, in-track clubs. You also active in sports or extracurricular activities. And one of the key things I look for is whether you've worked in a team. That's important.
And what kind of jobs and field skills are highly in demand? And what advice would you give to an undergraduate student before they graduate?
If you are looking to graduate as an engineer in the manufacturing department, manufacturing field, or maybe aviation, automobile, right? I think it's important that you try and gear yourself in that direction. Try and learn about what's happening in the industry. Like if you're looking at petroleum, I would suggest you try and understand what is going on around the world in terms of petroleum. What's going on? Who are the main players? Maybe you can study about OPEC. You can study about oil producing countries. You can study about what's happening with supply and demand. Who are the main consumers? See, what's very important for fresh graduates, you have to understand when you get employed, or even during the interview process, there's a high possibility they may ask you a question that's not relevant to your degree. You see, may not be relevant to your degree, but it may be relevant to the job. For instance, petroleum industry. Give me your thoughts on what's happening around the world. Give me your opinion. It can be. There's no right or wrong, but having an opinion and also reading about what's happening these current times is always very useful for an undergrad.
How important are communication skills and networking important in your company? And do you allow engagement between new employees and low-rank employees to communicate with top officials, regardless of the hierarchy?
Yeah, in my company, Petrofac, there's no restrictions between new employees and low-rank. Newcomers to communicate with top officials. There's no restrictions. Of course, I wouldn't meet the general manager often unless I go into town hall meetings where he's addressing the whole company. But if there's a need to, I can go and see him. The door's always open. Right? Communication skills are very important, oral and written. This is, this day and age, that if you ask me is the number one skill that is needed. Networking is important, but that happens over time. The more years you spend in the industry, the more people you start meeting. That also helps whenever you're looking for a job or if you're looking for information. So yeah, if you ask me, they're very important, communication skills and networking.
Okay. And how do you deal with pressure and stressful situations during work?
Well, you see, for me, work is there are many times where it's stressful, right? How to deal with it, it's a few ways. Well, for me, if it's too stressful, I would take a break. I'd maybe go down for a cup of coffee, get some fresh air, maybe discuss with my close colleagues, right? But on the macro point of view, I think what works for me is exercising. I play a lot of football, I do a lot of outdoor activity, running, and that helps me.
And how would you handle a situation if your boss is wrong?
Well, if I'm in a meeting and we had a discussion and if my boss is wrong, I would do two things. One is, if I feel it is okay for me to address that situation then and there, I would. But there are times where I wouldn't bring it up because there are too many people. I won't go and see him personally after that, to explain to him why I think he's wrong.
Okay, and it is known that some people fake or pretend to have qualities when applying for a job, even though they don't have it. Do employers expect a change in employees' behavior after recruitment?
Employers definitely expect a change. Employees, you see, behavior always changes. Even for myself. You see, when you first get a job, you're motivated, right? But how long does that motivation last? It can come down, it can go up again. So one of the key factors is to stay motivated, but it's not easy. There are times where there's no work, right? So it's a question of you always reminding yourself, I can give you examples. Like, I have colleagues that maybe will take too many breaks during working hours. one of the reasons they do that is because they are demotivated. You see, so to answer this question, yes, employers will always, I think it's normal to expect a change in behavior after recruitment. But that is one of the key elements, I think, to employees of how do you stay on in that job, is by motivating yourself. So there are times when you don't have much work, then you focus on a few things. Maybe you do some reading, maybe you do some filing, stuff like that. But when it comes to people faking and pretending to have certain qualities, that one, when an employer interviews an employee, you won't be able to tell, because we only employ you maybe they interview 2-3 days, right? Sometimes only once. So you won't be able to tell the extent, but over time you'll be able to tell, right? So yeah, they expect a change.
Having technical skills are required to do certain tasks, but beside that, what are the most important skills to have a successful career?
Yeah, that's where I think your personal skills come into play, right? Be adaptable, friendly, be a good communicator, assist where possible. Don't try and hide information. Don't try and keep information. These are a few, I think, skills that are very important. One of my bosses told me, see, if you're a manager, right, your key goal is to make sure you make more managers below you. See, so those people under you, your assessment should be how many managers you can make from the team below you. It's not by you always being the manager and how big your team grows. It's how many managers can you make. That would assess you what a good manager you are.
Okay.
So personal skills, interpersonal skills, very important.
And what is the common data protection policy for most organizations? What happens in case of an internal breach?
Privacy. Yeah, like not sharing sensitive information, technical information. Yeah, so in my company, yes, they're very strict. Currently, we are opening up our project for bids, tender process. So it's very important not to have dealings with these vendors outside of working hours. We cannot share with them any technical technical data or even commercial data. If there is an internal breach, it's usually a warning letter or you get dismissed straight away, because most of the time everybody is forewarned. So they're quite strict about sharing information.
What could be done in case of a major disagreement between a colleague and a team member?
I think the best way to solve it is by mediating. If I have a major disagreement with my colleague, I will then take it up to my senior or my direct boss, to get him to mediate, and then we find a way to solve it. It's best to solve it as soon as possible than just leave it.
What motivates you personally and makes you push harder and achieve your dreams?
You see, what motivates me personally is trying to be the best in what I do. Right? So, overall, whatever job I do, I try to be the best. And most of the time, you are not the best. There's always somebody better than you, right? So you try and learn. And I try and remind myself that, every now and then. See, you find that no matter how many years experience you have, there's always something new to learn. Just keep that in mind. And if you don't know it, say you don't know it, and you learn it. That's the best way to go ahead.
And how much effect could a work environment have on the employees?
I would say a big effect. Working environment is very, very important. I have worked with a few different organizations, and I can tell you that because you spend about 40 to 48 hours a week at work, right? So the work environment is very, very important. Like, I personally thrive in a flexible working environment. If it's too rigid, it becomes difficult. When I used to work with the Koreans, it was very rigid. That's because they're used to such working environments. High pressure, long hours, and you find that your effectiveness actually drops over time. With my current company, we work 4.5 days a week. We do 9 hours now from Monday to Thursday, and then Friday is half day. So you find the productivity level actually going higher. So working environment is very important.
What do certain dress codes say about an organization or a company?
To me, it is important to a certain extent. If you are meeting clients every day, then you should be dressed formally. But if you're not, pair of jeans and colored t-shirts, maybe t-shirt is fine. It doesn't say much to me. It doesn't represent the organization per se in terms of their quality, but appropriate dressing is necessary for that specific time. Again, if you're going to sell your product to a client, you should be dressed appropriately.
And lastly, as an engineer, which personality traits do you find helpful in your work regimen?
As I said before, there are a few things, right? I come back to the 3 points: attitude, skill, and knowledge. Skill and knowledge you can learn, but attitude comes from within. So have the right attitude. You'll be fine. Other traits that will help you, in your work area is, of course, being positive, right? If there's a problem, try and tell people that we can solve it. You may not find the solution then and there, but look towards that way. Instead of saying, no, this is a problem, we can't do this. We can. Not yet, but we can. And always try and share your experience and information. Don't try and hide it and try to be that number one guy who knows everything. You know, I think being in a team environment always has a better outcome than the individual. Those things will help you.
So lastly, what advice would you give us as engineering students?
So okay, first, well, I think I always believe in being slightly above average. You know, you can be the top if you can, great. If you can't, always try and hit that slightly above average mark. You know, and I think for undergraduates, few things are important. Grades are of course important, right? Try to do the best you can. Again, if you can't, there's no guarantee that if you come out number one, you'll be very successful in your career. So I think there are a few more things you got to look out for. One is being an all-rounder, right? So do well in your studies, get good grades, make lots of friends, socialize, and get involved in other activities, sports, clubs, whether it's, music, things like that. That will take you a long way. One of the things that you need to, of course, remind yourself is to enjoy the process. So I hope you guys from APU will do well and you will reach your goals. And most importantly, have fun.